After you play Hearthstone for long enough, games start to look pretty similar, and familiarity breeds contempt. Starport has been played over 2.1 million times in the past 2 weeks. I'm pretty sure every game I've played in the last year and a half has included
one dose solves any problem.
3 sets and 3 mini sets, or an entire year's worth of cards will be sacrificed for the sake of a new meta. So, in order to get you prepared for a totally different standard format, here are the most important cards rotating out. Festival of Legends. Most of the relevant cards from this expansion have actually been nerfed, but there remain some key features of the meta. Death Knight will be losing out on a few key pieces, notably Death Rattle synergies will be without Death Growl and Yelling Yodeler. These cards are particularly important right now with Zerg Death Knight. Spreading Infestor's Death Rattle to 1 or 2 minions means huge Zerg minions for the rest of the game. With Spawning Pool providing an abundance of Zerglings that double their stat buffs, Zerg Death Knight is one of the strongest strategies in the game right now, in no small part due to Death Growl. Similarly, Yelling Yodeler allows for more duplication of Infestor. Both these cards can also facilitate the theft of opposing minions when they are used in tandem with Reska Pit Boss. I also want to mention that Climactic Necrotic Explosion, the card that made Rainbow Death Knight a legitimate strategy for much of the past expansion cycle, will also be rotating. This card provided relevance to any corpse spending cards and will be a notable absence for attempts to build Rainbow DK in the future. Rogue will be losing out on one of the best bounce cards ever made in Breakdance. For 1 mana, which used to be relevant for Sonya combos, you got to bring back a useful battle cry while maintaining board pressure with a rush minion of equal stats to the minion you scooped. Rogue will be getting a spiritual successor to this in Web of Deception that summons a 4/4 spider with stealth, but costs twice as much and doesn't give you that great rush keyword. Mage will be losing one of the most interesting removal cards in the game in Reverberations. This loss won't feel as heavy with Titans rotating out of Standard, given that they were some of the best targets for Reverb, but this was still a great response to any larger minions or minions with elite death rattles. A couple boring ones. Hunter will be losing out on the ultimate power creep of Silverback Patriarch in Barrel of Monkeys, and Warrior will miss armor gain combos that relied on Razorfin Rockstar. While the Rockstar is less relevant now, Barrel of Monkeys has somehow been relevant since release as a superbly efficient defense tool for typically vulnerable Rexars. One of my favorites from the Audiopocalypse miniset is Horn of the Windlord, a multifaceted tool for my favorite classes. Horn of the Windlord is a great removal item while also being a win condition with its crazy high damage potential. Wind Fury on a weapon is no new concept for shamans, but for paladins, Horn of the Windlord opened up never before seen opportunities. Lunessa Paladin could use Divine Brew to buff the damage output of this weapon up to 20s and beyond. And with the nerf to Holy Glowsticks, Lunessa Paladin is now without both of its game-ending combos. The card I might have the hardest time letting go of is ETC Band Manager. Introducing a sideboard to Hearthstone was a shocking twist when this card was revealed as a pre-release card for Festival of Legends, and 2 years later, it is still a great staple neutral. Getting a big boost by being a way to smuggle duplicates into Highlander decks that would be introduced later, ETC allowed tech-happy players to have one silver bullet holder for their weapon breaking or freezing, and allowed decks to include cards like Kil'jaeden or Hearthstone Brew that would only ever be relevant for much slower matchups. A shiny example of versatility, it will be sad to see this weird cow guy steal away such a great mechanic. Now briefly, I want to have an In Memoriam section for some of the cards that were certainly much more relevant and were critical to the Year of the Wolf meta as it was happening, but have faded off a bit. Funnel Cake, which was somehow 1 mana originally, Doomkin, which was designed by a real-life evil person, Hollow Hound, which allowed Hunters and Death Knights 2 copies of Reno Jackson per game, Fizzle, nerf fresh off the presses. I think this is actually debated on whether this was a necessary nerf or just a sentiment nerf to stop 75-minute tied matches. Pozic, the level 1 reward card for this expansion, boring at first glance but an actually fascinating card that was a lot more relevant with a smaller card pool. Titans. I think it's appropriate that the most important cards leaving with the Titans expansion are, in fact, the Titans. Design of legendary minions I am not really a fan of. Titans don't introduce any particular strategy or anything, they're just generically good cards that are more than likely superior to whatever other 30th card you are going to include in your deck. Golganeth the Thunderer is currently the most popular one, and it's hard to see why not. It comes with a baked-in spell discount effect, and it has two really useful board control effects that can deal with wide or tall boards. Aman'Thul is in second with a crazy value generation ability and the best removal effect in the game now that Reno is 10 mana and has been nerfed. I've seen Aman'Thul in aggro decks, and control priests used to just run as many ways to duplicate this card as possible. One of the defining cards of the past 2 years. Yogg-Saron managed to survive its nerfs and is still widely played. Priest's Mind Control never saw play at 10 mana, but when you give that effect to every class and also make yourself able to audible into Mass Hysteria instead and summon a 7/5 body, this card becomes a lot more appealing. Eonar has the 3 craziest Titan abilities, which makes sense considering the card is 10 mana, but fully healing your hero, refreshing your mana, or filling your hand are total blowout effects. Sargeras was ubiquitous before Reno started unaliving nether portals, Agromar was just about the best thing hunters could do for 6 mana, and the Primus' Runes of Blood was an excellent way to boost your health while also beefing up your Titan's chances of surviving to next turn to use more abilities. I could go on about the Titans, but it's a lot like what I said earlier. They didn't really create any strategy of their own, but were just very consistent role players that you had a hard time excluding from any deck. If you want cards that did birth new strategies, take a look at Plague Death Knight. Plague Death Knight was a plague on the ladder for quite a while, reminiscent of some of the paint by numbers decks we had in Skullman's Academy, Soul Demon Hunter, Librempeld, and this deck was a slog to play against every time. You play Staff of the Primus, then you play Distressed Faldir, then you play whatever you want on turn 3, and you always have Helya on turn 4, and then you could start launching Chain Guardians for way too cheap. This deck was known for 2 things, the fact that it had a crazy win rate at low ranks and would then consistently fall off as ranks got higher, and the fact that it turned off Highlander cards on release and contributed to them getting changed to if your deck started with no duplicates. If you don't like that particular brand of inevitability with Helya and the Plagues, look no further than Odin and Control Warrior strategies. Warrior's ability to control the board through cards like Billowing Flames and Sanitize, and draw with Stoneskin Armorer came from this expansion. These tools allowed warriors to survive long enough to drop Odin and transform all of their previously non-threatening armor gain cards into death rays pointed at your face. While Odin is not nearly as popular as it once was, as someone who organized a tournament during the height of its power and watched it win every time, I don't think I'll be missing these cards too much. Forge of Wills will be a big loss for Warlocks from this expansion as it turns slow piles of stats into threatening giants moving at a high velocity. Elite with any type of giant card and now synergizing with Warlock's location synergies, Forge of Wills was a huge comeback mechanic for Warlocks to swing boards they were unfavored in. Finally, while it has been nerfed, I do want to mention that Always a Bigger Yormonger is still alive and kicking and still greatly problematic. From combos with Hollowhound to the fantastically named Grunter Hunter to Zerg hand buff decks, this card applies way too much facial pressure, and I can't believe it used to be 1 mana. Showdown in the Badlands. I grouped the important cards from Showdown in the Badlands into 3 groups: Highlander, Excavate, and the super common friends. Excavate was incredibly important upon release, with Excavate rewards like the Azerite Snake stealing all of your opponent's HP, and the Azerite Scorpion allowing for slower rogue strategies, easy access to tons of cheap out-of-class cards. However, despite immense relevance upon release, all these cards have fallen off harder than Chance the Rapper, and are actually not that likely to be seen in modern games. In a similar boat are the Highlander cards. Classes that did not receive an Excavate treasure received a Highlander card instead, and while the effects of Thaldarin the Lost or Dr. Holiday were great, the real tummy rub, pat on the head reward was the privilege of including Reno Lone Ranger in your deck. A card that totally warped everything around it. Reno is now much less relevant after going through 3 separate nerfs and maybe 4 depending on how you feel about druids. Being changed to requiring your deck to have originally had no duplicates instead of currently having no duplicates masked this mustache man from Plagues, but hurt strategies that would just draw through most of their duplicate-filled deck until Reno turned on. Reno was then changed to 9 mana, then it was changed to 10 mana, and then, when it was still too strong, the balance team decided to coat the whole thing in Raising Cane sauce and throw it to a group of college students. Reno was nerfed to 1. Only remove minions, and 2. Not lock your opponent into only 1 board space. With basically the whole effect gone, Reno and Highlander cards are no longer relevant and not cards you will notice gone after rotation. Super Commons. So interestingly, the two main mechanics of this expansion will not be missed, but the cards that will be? The Commons. That's right, the most pedestrian cards included in the set have been affecting the meta far more than the fancy legendaries. I call them the Super Commons. Miracle Salesman. I don't have all the stats for all of Hearthstone, but I am calling this one of the most played cards of all time. Miracle Salesman has been a default 1-drop for 1-drop lacking classes since the jump, offering a 2/2 stat line, previously popular with Blazing Battle Mage. It comes with a death rattle that, in a roundabout way, draws you a card for 1 mana. While it's not quite as direct as Loot Hoarder, it is certainly an upside for the card. Not overpowered, not unfair, Miracle Salesman absolutely made its mark on Hearthstone in this time period, and games will feel completely different without this Ninjago villain on every turn 1. Gold Panner. Similar to Miracle Salesman, Gold Panner was another super frequently used card, but this time for the 2-mana slot. Did your deck have no idea what it wanted to do on turn 2? Gold Panner. Did you need a dig for some kind of combo? Gold Panner. Gold Panner afforded a consistency level to a lot of classes that would never normally have that. This totally changed what you could expect from your opponent. Miracle Salesman on 1 into Gold Panner on turn 2 will be what I think of when I think of this era of Hearthstone. Either that or Miracle Salesman on turn 1 and Greedy Partner on turn 2. Released as part of a partner cycle of cards, this was far and away the Nick Jonas of the group. Or the Joe Jonas. Guess it depends on how you feel about DNCE. With great 2-drops like the aforementioned Gold Panner round, it was pretty likely that you would meet the condition to summon this River Croc and get a coin, and coins became very interesting. Were you playing a combo deck like Naga DH or Lanessa Paladin? Well, perfect, here's your combo piece. Did you just want a generic way to ramp into your big card? Greedy Partner has your back. You could even use it in weird gimmicks like with Wishing Well. And just when you thought that the commons in the main set were good, the mini set, Delve into Deepholm, brought 4 more superbly relevant commons. All dual class cards, these were total staples that will create a big vacuum when we start a new expansion without them. Needle Rock Totem. Not much to say here that wasn't already stated with Gold Panner. You're trading 1 attack that you weren't really using anyway to also get 2 armor each turn, and you get a mostly irrelevant totem tag too. The effects of these cards were so good that it wouldn't be uncommon to see both Needle Rock Totem and Gold Panner in the same deck. Quick Pick. And while Shaman and Warrior got their 2 mana draw consistency, Demon Hunter and Rogue got their own in Quick Pick. Only a 1 attack weapon, you didn't mind when you were paying 2 mana to draw 2 cards and get a weapon equipped. Whether it was Cycle Rogue strategies, Weapon Rogue, or just any deck that liked a little extra draw power, Quick Pick was a monster. Well, monster is a bit of an exaggeration. It wasn't like Trog Gem Tosser. Trog Gem Tosser, who could actually close out games. Fatigue Warlock, Hybrid Druid, it didn't matter. This Trog was out for blood, and was about to throw 2 to 10 rocks directly at your face. Mining Casualties. Speaking of potentially putting a lot of damage out, Mining Casualties provided a lot of tokens for not a lot of cost for Paladin and Death Knight. It was so hard to compete with putting in something else at 2, when this provided corpses for Death Knight, Silver Hands for Dude strategies, and bodies to buff for Paladin. But this all pales in comparison to the card we'll be missing most of all. Cactus Rager, baby. Oh yeah, it's a Cactus Rager sweep. Yeah, baby. Oh, please subscribe. We're close to 10,000. Please follow on Twitter. We're close to 1,000. Please join the Chun Discord. It's cool. Alright, talking smooch.